Our correspondent Shiv Arur is with us on the phone line. Shiv, this information, all right, I'm told that we will get Shiv in just a minute, but this information, of course, coming after today's attack. 20 security personnel killed in a Naxal ambush in a dense forest in Chhattisgarh, Sukma district, which is near the Tongpal police station. The attacks began with simultaneous blasts. The incident took place in roughly the same area where Naxals killed 76 Jawans in April 2010. Shiv Arur is now with us for more on this. Shiv, the information that we were receiving about those intelligence warnings seemingly corroborated by the Panshu Kabra, who's the DIG for Chhattisgarh, who said he did have warnings of an attack in this area.
That appears to be the case, Pierre. Now, the precise nature of the information that was actually shared from that review meeting last week, chaired by the Cabinet Secretary, is something that we'll be fleshing out in just a few minutes from now when we get a copy of the actual review note that was prepared after the meeting during the July-August season as well. And since then, there have been two Cabinet Committee on Security meetings chaired by the Prime Minister where Chhattisgarh has actually been red flagged as a high-risk area ahead of election season this year. This happened in 2013 and in January 2014. So it's not like the forces on the ground didn't know that something of this kind could happen. But what this review meeting really did was narrow it down, saying with just a few weeks to go before elections start, the Naxals who've managed to regroup, replenish, recuperate and sort of get the logistics and resources in order, are planning to make a big splash and bleed the forces in a big way, maximize the violence, maximize the casualties, just ahead of the Lok Sabha elections. And that, Pierre, appears to be precisely what this attack was all about.
At least in this case, it seems the rescue party itself wasn't ambushed. They managed to get through unscathed.
That's right. Signature tactics that have been studied, threadbare by response and of agencies operating in the area. A laid ambush for a truck, the possibility of landmines being used as well. The fact is, the war manual of the Maoists is something that agencies operating in the area have been studying in very great detail for a long time. The question now is, is that information really enough? If a forewarning and knowledge of how the Naxals actually operate, how they lay such traps, how they actually conduct ambushes, is not going to be enough to either A, avoid an ambush, or B, fight back the Maoists once they mount an ambush. It says very little about the level of preparedness within the security forces. Remember, as Gaurav Sawant was reporting a short while ago, there's a unified command structure where you see coordination between several different agencies in Chhattisgarh. Now, that can be a good and a bad thing. A good thing because it means that you've got the resources of several different agencies. A bad thing because, like this particular incident has shown, there may be intelligence, there may be forewarning, there may be adequate knowledge of how the Naxals operate, but at the end of the day, the information you really need to avoid such an attack, or at least fight back and avoid casualties, simply slips through the cracks, and that appears to have been what's happened, Pierre.
Shiv, I want to come back to the victims of this particular attack. We understand that the bodies have been taken back to a hospital in Sukma. Do we know anything about the condition of the injured men?
We understand that 20 people have been feared killed. Their bodies have been taken back to Sukma. We also understand from our correspondent Jugal Purohit, Pierre, that at least 6 to 7 Jawans have been injured. And a few of them are critically injured. They are being administered critical care. They are in intensive care. There is a possibility that the casualty numbers could go up. Let's hope the number doesn't go up right now. We're awaiting a statement also from the police in Chhattisgarh to get a fix on the exact numbers. Of course, the names of the casualties will only be revealed by the Chhattisgarh government and the police once the families have been notified. But we are expecting a statement to come out both from the Chhattisgarh State Police, from the CRPF, as well as the state government in just a couple of hours from now, Pierre.
All right, Shiv Arur, many thanks for getting us those updates and developments from Chhattisgarh and indeed from the national capital in Delhi. Let's listen in to reactions that came in shortly after this deadly ambush.
तोंगपाल से CRPF और जिला पुलिस की एक संयुक्त पार्टी निकली थी और उसकी मुठभेड़ की सूचना आ रही है। उसमें 3 घायल तोंगपाल पहुंचे हैं और 3 डेड बॉडीज वहां से रिकवर हुई हैं। इसके अलावा और जो विस्तृत जानकारी सीनियर अधिकारियों के मौके पर पहुंचने के बाद दी जा सकेगी। ये तोंगपाल और जीरम के बीच में, तोंगपाल से करीब 5 किलोमीटर दूरी पर मुठभेड़ थोड़ी देर तक पहले फायरिंग हो रही थी, अभी फायरिंग रुकी हुई है। देखिए, मौके पे पहुंचने के बाद ही पता लगेगा। जब कोई जवानों ने पोजीशन ली होती है, जब फायरिंग की होती है, तो एग्जैक्टली वहां मौके पे काउंट करना मुश्किल होता है। तो अब मौके पे जब अधिकारी पहुंचेंगे, सही स्थिति तब पता चलेगी। हाँ, ब्लास्ट की सूचना भी है और फायरिंग, दोनों ब्लास्ट और फायरिंग दोनों की सूचना आ रही है। लेकिन लेटेस्ट घायलों को पहले जगदलपुर लाया जाएगा, फिर जैसे उनकी मेडिकल स्थिति थी अकॉर्डिंगली उनको आगे लाया जाएगा।
Jugal Purohit, our correspondent, is now with us for more on this. Jugal, what are you hearing from the area of operations there? We're going to try and get Jugal back on the phone line. I believe we've just lost the connection there. Let's listen into other reactions also that have come in.
Information, it is available for most forces, but that doesn't convert into any specific actionable intelligence. This is general information. I'm sure the troops would have taken all tactical precaution. This should have happened despite that, but it's too early for me to comment on the details. It is a very regrettable and sad incident, and I'm sure the force will sort of get back on their even keel, and it's definitely a setback.
These are live pictures from Sukma, where we heard that several of the injured Jawans were taken to a hospital. Remember, a party of 40 Jawans was making their way in an area domination exercise. They were ambushed by a group of 150 Naxals. We know that at least 20 of those Jawans were killed during that ambush, and several were injured. Some of those injured are now being brought to the hospital here for emergency treatment. We also know that those bodies of the Jawans who were killed are also being flown back to Sukma, where they will then be handed over, from where they will be handed over to the families. But these visuals coming from outside the hospital in Sukma, where some of the injured Jawans have been rushed to get emergency treatment. As the DIG, in fact, the Deputy Inspector General of Police for Chhattisgarh, Mr. Dipanshu Kabra, told reporters, most of the injuries are from bullet wounds. That was because at least 150 Naxals launched that ambush, catching them in the crossfire. Gaurav Sawant, our Strategic Affairs Editor, is on the phone line. Gaurav, what are you hearing at this point?
Sources in the Ministry of Home Affairs told us that this was a pre-planned attack. There was an intelligence alert that was generated. It wasn't very specific to this area, but sources saying that Chhattisgarh police had been informed of a spectacular attack that took place just before elections. Security forces had been alerted about the attack, but the fact the attack would take place so soon after the alert wasn't known. In this particular case, the security forces were almost drawn out of the CRPF camp as soon as they left the city. Now, the rule for the security forces, especially the Central Reserve Police Force, is that they will dominate the area between 2 to 5 kilometers from the center, and they will not venture out into the jungles. The task of venturing out into the uninhabited areas or the rural areas is that of the Chhattisgarh police and the Special Task Force. In this case, the security forces were virtually drawn out, ambushed and attacked, in which there have been these massive losses. But once again, Chhattisgarh police sources telling us that they have a fair idea about where these Maoists came from, and they will launch a counter-offensive.
Gaurav, this information that intelligence was available is of course worrying, but at the same time, as Shiv was telling us, it's always hard with intelligence because you don't often have specific details, otherwise these attacks wouldn't have happened in the first place. That said, the kind of similarities this attack has to ones that have taken place before is worrying, because it raises questions about how security forces are learning from previous attacks and applying those lessons.
You are spot on there, Priya. It is an eerily similar attack to the one that took place Vidya Kiran Shukla, senior Congress party leader, and several Congress activists in that area, in an area barely 5 kilometers from where this incident has taken place. And it just goes on to show that the Maoists are well aware of the standard operating procedures that security forces adopt. The security forces yet to adapt to the way the Maoists operate. In this particular case, our sources in the Ministry of Home Affairs are telling us one of the problems is the surprise element. Security forces have been advised to maintain the surprise element, follow certain standard operating procedures, which in fact in this case initial reports seem to indicate were not followed, but only after the detailed inquiry would they know what went wrong and what led to this attack.
Gaurav, thanks very much for these updates. Kamaljit Sandhu also joining us. Kamal, I believe you have more information.
Well, definitely. What we can tell to you is the Ministry of Home Affairs has confirmed to us that this was a clear violation of SOP. We've also been told that this was a very predictable way of going to that particular construction site. The Maoists would have easily identified the timing and the way they would go in a group. This is something which has been prevented earlier by Ministry of Home Affairs. There were clear instructions after the Dantewada incident that they should not go in such a large group. The timing should not be the same. This is something that they have violated. They're saying this is the same modus operandi which was used in Bijapur, where 5 of the state policemen were killed in a similar fashion because they were guarding the construction site where construction was going on, and they would go at a particular time and then they got ambushed. And here also we know there have been number of casualties, even though the figure now really differs. It's somewhere between 15, but we also know is 15 to 20. But what we know is that there was a heavy exchange of fire. We believe from our sources that perhaps a lot of Naxals have got killed. But one of the things the Naxals do is do not leave their body behind, do not leave any of their own men behind. In that sense, even if the person is killed, they usually carry it. And remember, there were 200 Naxals in number. In that sense, they could have easily taken 2-3 bodies along with them if there was a heavy exchange of fire and some men could have got killed. The DG CRPF is rushing to the spot. He has reached Chhattisgarh, is flying to Tongpal area. What we know is that DG of the state is already there. We tried to speak to Mr. A.N. Upadhyay, who said he is extremely busy, but this is also a time which is extremely crucial, both for CRPF as well as state police. There are state elections around there. There's a deep investigation going on into the May 2013 attack, where more than 28 congressmen, including leaders, were killed. So in that sense, there's a multiple task at hand. The time seems to be running out, but clearly, despite having SOPs given, there's been a clear violation of standard operating procedures by CRPF men.
Attacking them near the Sukma and Bastar border. This information coming in about 2 hours ago. We're hearing of more developments since then. It's possible, we're hearing, that the Raman Singh government was aware of a potential attack of this kind. That information coming from the DIG, Mr. Dipanshu Kabra, the DIG for Chhattisgarh. We're also hearing that intelligence agencies last week had conducted a review meeting in Delhi, a meeting chaired by the Cabinet Secretary Ajit Seth, where the intelligence chiefs detailed the Naxal capabilities to mount just such an attack, what they called a spectacular attack. The review meeting assessed the Naxal threats for Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Orissa and Bihar. And according to that analysis, they flagged Chhattisgarh as the state with the highest risk leading up to the elections. Kamaljit Sandhu is still with us on the phone line. Kamaljit, you were reporting earlier that the Ministry of Home Affairs indicates that standard operating procedures may not have been followed by the forces in the field.
Well, while calling it a pure ambush, they've also said there's a clear violation of standard operating procedures. Remember, after the Dantewada attack, where 77 CRPF men had lost their lives, there was a clear SOP which was put in place. There was also a committee which was looking into what really happened into that. And obviously, SOPs were put in place where they said the CRPF men, or for that matter, security forces deployed in Naxal areas, will not go in the same routine every day in a particular area, and not in such large numbers. And therefore, what we have come to know from our sources is that these men were deployed to take care of the security of the construction site where the road was being constructed. And they're saying that this was the same time that they were actually going every day to, in such large numbers, would have been clearly identified, or the sources of Maoists would have tipped them off about this particular movement, after which this entire trap was really laid. And what we know is that there was a heavy exchange of fire, and even though CRPF men shot back and have killed a few Naxals, but remember, the bodies have not been recovered, but there is a clear indication.
अरे भाई अब ट्रांसफर ले लेना यार, पेशेंट को देखेंगे अंदर जाके होना है। तो क्या स्थिति, तो कितने पेशेंट्स लाए गए, क्या स्थिति है?
अभी 2 पेशेंट लाए गए, दोनों को पेट में ग्रीवियस इंजरीज हैं, दोनों के इंटेस्टाइन लूप्स बाहर पड़े हुए, दोनों को इमरजेंसी सर्जरी की आवश्यकता है। इसलिए मैं आपको सिर्फ इतना बताने बाहर निकला हूँ। बीपी वगैरह सब स्टेबल है, पर दोनों के इंटेस्टिनल लूप्स, आंतड़ियाँ जो है वो बाहर निकली हुई हैं। सो प्रे टू गॉड, विल डू आवर बेस्ट पॉसिबल।
सर दोनों कॉन्शियस हैं अभी अनकॉन्शियस?
दोनों कॉन्शियस हैं। थैंक यू।
That was one of the doctors at the hospital in Sukma, where those two injured CRPF Jawans were taken after that ambush earlier in the afternoon. And unfortunate news, or at least not very positive news. He said there's grievous injuries to both men, especially in their stomachs, and that while their blood pressure is stable, they require emergency surgery if their lives are to be saved. So not positive news. The doctor saying do pray for those two Jawans who have been injured in that ambush.
A lot in terms of the morale in that sense. So what I also can now tell you is that the DG CRPF is about to reach that spot in another hour or so. We also been told that the state DG has now reached the spot along with senior officials. It is likely that MHA officials may fly tomorrow to that particular spot, but this is ahead of the 2014 general elections, where there have been earlier alerts as well as advisories from MHA, which clearly indicate that they have to increase the vigil, that the SOPs should be followed to the T. In that sense, this is going to be a huge setback.
Kamalji Sandhu, many thanks for that update there. We're going to continue tracking developments.